Susan Flannery as Stephanie Forrester. Stephanie Forrester, the formidable matriarch of a legendary fashion dynasty, stood as an untouchable monument forged by the extraordinary talent of Susan Flannery. Through piercing eyes and an aura of absolute authority, she transformed the character into a lasting symbol of power and unyielding strength. For decades, Susan was not only the soul of the series, but also the embodiment of the brightest golden age of American television. Yet hidden behind the grandeur of the Forrester mansion was a fragile reality Susan worked tirelessly to conceal.
What goes on in my home isn't any of your damn business.
Eric told me about it, Stephanie.
Oh, I see. You want to talk about what happened last night.
Her life became a prolonged inner conflict as her faith in love quietly shattered after deeply personal heartbreaks. She would later admit, with bitterness, that she had turned away from romantic happiness in exchange for a solitary career, leaving her Santa Barbara home wrapped in an almost frightening silence. Cruelly, just as her fame reached its peak, fibromyalgia began to ravage her body. Every commanding moment on screen was purchased with searing pain as she clenched each breath to mask the slow collapse of her muscles before the camera. The most brutal turning point came in 2018. A fateful fall shattered her hip, forcing Susan to undergo a high-risk hip replacement surgery at the age of 75. It was the darkest chapter of her life, when the once unbreakable Iron Woman was suddenly rendered helpless, learning to walk again step by step like a child, enduring torment both physical and emotional. Even more devastating, her eyesight deteriorated severely, pushing a gifted director into the shadows of obscurity. To witness the hands that once commanded an entire empire now trembling from complications was a haunting sight. Stripped of independence, her later years became a silent battle against decay, standing in stark contrast to the pride and dominance Stephanie Forrester once embodied. Though she has withdrawn from the spotlight, Susan Flannery remains a legend of an era. She chose a quiet life alongside her Labrador dogs, stepping away from fame in search of peace after a lifetime of storms. Her legacy extends far beyond 3 prestigious Emmy Awards. It is a lesson in dignity and pride carried to the very end. The name Susan Flannery will forever be cherished as an immortal memory in television history. John McCook as Eric Forrester. When speaking of the soul of the Forrester Empire in The Bold and the Beautiful, no one could ever replace the elegance and authority of Eric Forrester, as embodied by John McCook. With his steady gaze and aristocratic demeanor, he created an enduring symbol of the ideal patriarch, a magnetic fashion tycoon whose presence commanded respect. For decades, Eric Forrester's refined image has become an irreplaceable part of the collective memory of millions of viewers. Yet behind those expensive suits lay a far harsher reality, where fame slowly began to darken into tragedy.
For my son.
You have no idea what I've done for him or what he's done for me. You know nothing about our relationship. And if you cared anything about him...
Stop it right now!
John McCook's real life stood in painful contrast to the fulfillment he portrayed on screen. His celebrated career drained his youth through relentless filming schedules that stretched beyond 12 hours a day for more than 35 consecutive years. That crushing pressure not only led to chronic exhaustion and repeated emergency hospitalizations, but also shattered his personal life. 2 tearful divorces, first from Marilyn McPherson in 1971, and most painfully the devastating breakdown of his marriage to his second wife, Juliette Prowse, in 1979, pushed John into a deep well of isolation and emotional despair. At the height of his fame, this powerful man became fragile, quietly trembling under the fear of replacement and the unforgiving erosion of time. The true nightmare arrived in 2018, marking the most harrowing turning point of his life, when death itself stood at the door. It was the darkest chapter of all. A life-or-death open-heart surgery, a desperate battle to reclaim each fragile breath from the grip of mortality. Imagine the man who once stood as the unshakable pillar of an entire dynasty, now lying motionless on a hospital bed, his chest split open, surrounded only by the cold hum of machines and the sterile scent of antiseptic. The brutal surgical scars were not confined to his body alone. They cut deeper as he watched beloved co-stars who had become family to him, such as Darlene Conley and Joseph Mascolo, pass away one by one, leaving him standing alone on an increasingly silent set. How bitter it is that a symbol of timeless charm must now struggle with post-surgical complications and declining eyesight at the age of 81, where every scene he films becomes a weary battle between artistic devotion and a body worn thin by time.
Stephanie and I are separated. Stephen, I'm in love with your daughter. But I can promise you, I'll do everything in my power to make her as happy as she's made me.
Having endured the ravages of illness and loss, John McCook remains an enduring legacy of American television. He gave his entire youth to his craft, using his scars and his fading breath to write a living legend. Time may be merciless, but the spirit of Eric Forrester will forever remain a treasured memory, a powerful testament to unwavering devotion to art until the very last moment. John McCook's unwavering devotion to the role of Eric Forrester for more than 35 years has become a subject of intense debate. Many viewers express deep admiration, seeing it as a powerful symbol of loyalty and an undying passion for art, one that willingly sacrifices personal health and happiness in service of the audience. Yet others argue that remaining confined to a single role for so long was a risky mistake, costing him career diversity and ultimately pulling him into an inescapable cycle of exhaustion and decline. So what do you think? Was his sacrifice a noble journey of greatness, or a tragic consequence of stubborn devotion? Which side do you agree with? Comment 1 if you admire his dedication, or 0 if you believe the price he paid was simply too high. Katherine Kelly Lang as Brooke Logan. Beautiful Brooke Logan, the center of every romantic storm and scandal in The Bold and the Beautiful, became an unforgettable icon of beauty through the portrayal of Katherine Kelly Lang. With her flowing blonde hair and soulful eyes, she was not only the dream lover of multiple generations, but also the record-holding presence whose enduring longevity fueled the irresistible appeal of America's daytime television empire for nearly 4 decades. In stark contrast to the romance on screen, Katherine's real life has been surrounded by devastating emotional fractures. Twice she walked down the aisle, and twice she was forced to taste the bitterness of collapse. Her first marriage to Scott Snyder ended in 1995, leaving behind the pain of separation while her children were still heartbreakingly young. The turmoil did not stop there. Her highly publicized divorce from Andrea in 2014 turned into a brutal legal battle that drained both her finances and her spirit. At her most shattered moment, the sudden loss of her beloved father, Keith Wegeman, struck like a fatal blow, stealing away her last emotional anchor and plunging an already fragile woman into the depths of depression and extreme loneliness. The cruelest peak arrived in May 2022, when a horrific horseback riding accident violently shattered the quiet life she had tried to rebuild. Her kneecap and pelvis were crushed into multiple fragments, forcing Katherine to confront the terrifying possibility of permanent disability. In the cold emergency room, metal pins and screws pierced her flesh to piece together a body that was no longer whole. Those were months of utter exhaustion confined to a hospital bed, where the so-called queen of drama had to relearn how to move her leg centimeter by agonizing centimeter, battling the haunting fear of fading beauty and the merciless cruelty of aging. The contrast between Brooke Logan, forever seductive in high heels, and a trembling, powerless Katherine in the arms of doctors is a brutal truth that tightens the heart of anyone who witnesses it. Yet having survived the merciless turns of fate, Katherine Kelly Lang continues to stand resilient as a symbol of the will to live. She leaves behind not only an immortal role, but also a testament to powerful rebirth rising from the ruins of pain. Though the scars, both physical and emotional, remain, the mark she has carved into television history endures as a radiant chapter that nothing can ever erase. Ron Moss as Ridge Forrester. Ridge Forrester, the dashing romantic with those unmistakably deep eyes, became an icon of seduction on The Bold and the Beautiful from its earliest days in 1987. Through the portrayal of Ron Moss, Ridge was not only a gifted fashion designer, but also the beating heart of the show's most legendary love stories. For 25 years, his rugged charm and magnetic presence carved an unshakable monument in the hearts of fans around the world. Behind the irresistible heartthrob, however, lay a life threaded with quiet emotional wounds. Ron Moss spent decades fighting the dismissive label of a pretty face, struggling to prove his true ability under the crushing weight of fame. As his career soared, his personal life quietly unraveled. His 12-year marriage to Sherry Shattuck ended in 2002, leaving behind a haunting emptiness that pulled him into a prolonged crisis of faith and isolation. A series of disappointing solo music projects that followed only deepened his uncertainty, as the once blinding spotlight began to fade under the merciless passage of time and expectations he could no longer fulfill. The most devastating blow struck in 2012, when a violent head-on car accident shattered the peak of Ron's career. Broken ribs and severe head trauma did more than damage his body. They left him with short-term memory loss, a devastating sentence for an actor. The moment he realized he could no longer reliably remember scripts, Ron was forced to confront total helplessness, stepping away from the role of Ridge Forrester that had become inseparable from his very breath. More bitter still was watching Thorsten Kaye take over the role after a quarter century, an agonizing wound to the pride of a fallen star. The long, silent months of rehabilitation, facing eyes that slowly lost their spark and a mind struggling to recover, became a wordless tragedy, shrinking a once powerful icon into a solitary figure adrift in the unforgiving current of Hollywood. Leaving the spotlight with deep regret, Ron Moss has since chosen a nomadic life guided by music, using it as a balm to heal the scars of his past. Though the glory of Ridge Forrester now belongs to memory, the legacy he left behind remains a radiant chapter in television history. The scars from that fateful accident stand as proof of an artist who burned with everything he had, even when the price was the quiet collapse of a personal empire. Hunter Tylo as Dr. Taylor Hayes. Dr. Taylor Hayes, the destined rival of Brooke Logan, became a symbol of intellectual beauty and aristocratic grace through the portrayal of Hunter Tylo. With her mesmerizing eyes and ethereal presence, she quickly captured the hearts of viewers, emerging as one of the most desired faces on daytime television in the late 1980s. Taylor was never merely a role. She embodied elegance and quiet pride at the very core of American psychological drama. Behind that radiant exterior, however, lay a fate marked by injustice and unrelenting pain. Hunter's career suffered a brutal blow in 1996 when she was fired by Aaron Spelling from Melrose Place simply for being pregnant, a scandal that stripped her of a life-changing opportunity at the very moment she most needed protection. Her devotion as a mother was tested again in 1998 when her daughter Katya was diagnosed with a rare form of retinal cancer, forcing the surgical removal of one eye to save her life. months spent fighting illness alongside her child, compounded by the collapse of trust following her divorce from Michael Tylo in 2005, shattered her remaining resilience and pushed her into the depths of emotional breakdown.
I'm Caroline's physician. I'm sorry, Rich.
Tragedy engulfed Hunter's life on October 18, 2007, the day her son, Michael Tylo Jr., drowned in the family swimming pool after suffering a severe seizure. It was fate's cruelest punishment, leaving a grieving mother utterly broken before the grave of her 19-year-old child. In heartbreaking irony, amid her emotional collapse, she turned to cosmetic surgery as a numbing escape from reality. Excessive procedures slowly destroyed the once-adored beauty, leaving her face unfamiliar and exposing her to merciless public ridicule. A woman who had once stood at the peak of fame now lived like a shadow within her own home in Nevada, battling depression in isolation as the warmth of lost stardom faded into cold silence. Yet despite a life carved with bleeding wounds, Hunter Tylo remains an irreplaceable soul of cinema and television. She lived fully, loved deeply, and suffered profoundly to give the world unforgettable performances. No matter how devastating the tragedies, they could never extinguish the light of a talent that gave everything, like a silkworm, unraveling itself to create something lasting, leaving behind a legacy of resilience forged in the heart of the storm. Don Diamont as Bill Spencer Jr. Bill Spencer Jr., the defiant billionaire radiating absolute authority, found a perfectly matched soul through the intensely masculine portrayal of Don Diamont. With his ice-cold stare and calculating half-smile, Don transformed Bill Spencer into a predator who has dominated every power game since 2009. The role not only cemented his A-list status, but also elevated his name into a symbol of irresistible allure and unshakable strength on screen.
Anybody who's going to stand up to you in defense of those women? Well, there was only one miscalculation.
In stark contrast to the opulence of a media empire portrayed on television, Don's real life has been shadowed by death at every turn. The first blow came with the sudden loss of his beloved father, Albert Feinberg, the greatest pillar of his life. Before the pain could fade, fate struck again when his brother Jack passed away from brain cancer at a tragically young age. The suffering did not end there. His sister Bette also died after a long, devastating illness. Losing 3 immediate family members in succession tore a massive void in his psyche, plunging him into panic and profound sorrow. During those years, the man known for his strength battled crushing loneliness, struggling to stay afloat in the treacherous waters of Hollywood as every blood-bound anchor disappeared one by one.
Kitty's gonna be home any minute. I don't want her to find you here.
The true threshold of despair opened in 2002 when his marriage to Rachel Braun collapsed, leaving Don nearly penniless and facing prolonged unemployment. A former star at the peak of success now found himself raising 4 sons alone, haunted by financial hardship and the fear of being permanently forgotten. The pain reached another brutal peak as he watched his nephew deteriorate day by day from multiple sclerosis. Witnessing a loved one imprisoned inside an unresponsive body was a harrowing experience, reopening memories of graves already etched into his past. To escape the cruelty of reality, Don threw himself into extreme physical training, turning his body into a tireless machine to conceal the fractures within. The image of the invincible billionaire on television suddenly shrank into a trembling man before the altars of lost loved ones, a harsh truth capable of shaking even the hardest heart. Having survived the devastation of fate, Don Diamont now stands as living proof of rebirth from ashes. He leaves behind not only powerful performances, but also a legacy defined by resilience and profound devotion to family. Though his heart bears countless scars, the mark he has carved into television history endures as a heroic chapter, testament to a spirit that never surrendered to adversity. Thorsten Kaye as Ridge Forrester. The modern incarnation of Ridge Forrester, a man defined by inner conflict and etched with emotional scars, has been compellingly portrayed by Thorsten Kaye since 2013. Taking over a role once embodied by a legendary icon, Thorsten chose not to imitate, but to carve out a raw, rugged, and profoundly introspective Ridge of his own. His presence injected new life into the character, allowing Ridge to remain a central pillar in the ongoing saga of the Forrester fashion empire.
Ridge.
Behind the glow of the studio lights lies the heavy heart of an artist perpetually lost among illusory values. From the moment he stepped into the role, Thorsten faced a merciless wave of backlash from loyal fans of Ron Moss, plunging him into a prolonged crisis of self-worth. His real life became a constant tug-of-war between a deep passion for authentic Broadway theater and the hollow realities of Hollywood. As his career ascended, his private world withered. In 2016, a highly publicized divorce from actress Susan Haskell, after many years together, dealt a devastating psychological blow, pushing him into a secluded solitude where he withdrew entirely from the media to quietly endure the collapse of his family life. The most brutal ordeal came in the form of enforced separation from his children, caused by an unforgiving filming schedule in Los Angeles, while his home remained in New York. The guilt of missing his children's milestones turned into a bleeding wound that followed him through years of isolation on set. Adding to the burden, his career was repeatedly threatened by serious joint and skeletal injuries sustained during independent projects such as The Bay, 2021, making every step at the age of 59 heavy with physical pain. Watching contemporaries like Joseph Mascolo fade and pass away, Thorsten lives with a constant awareness of life's impermanence. The commanding man seen on television suddenly becomes small, riding an old motorcycle across state lines at night, fleeing the suffocating mask of fame that has drained his soul. Despite the quiet injuries carried within, Thorsten Kaye continues to give relentlessly to preserve the spirit of the show. He has drawn directly from his loneliness and personal suffering to breathe life into the character, leaving behind an artistic legacy rich in introspection. Whatever the future may hold, Thorsten's Ridge Forrester, instinctive, weathered, and deeply human, will remain a memorable chapter, a lasting lesson in an artist's perseverance amid the storms of life. Jacqueline MacInnes Wood as Steffy Forrester. Steffy Forrester, the proud, formidable, and fiercely ambitious princess of the fashion empire, found her most complete and commanding form through the performance of Jacqueline MacInnes Wood beginning in 2008. With her striking beauty and commanding presence, Jacqueline not only carried forward the legacy of those who came before her, but also carved out a modern symbol of strength and authority, becoming the driving force behind every major emotional climax for a new generation of fans.
Think about Hope. Think of the history I have with Hope. Think of the history that you have with Hope. She's gonna be betrayed.
In stark contrast to the glamorous image of an A-list star, Jacqueline's real life has been defined by relentless pressure and the brutal demands of perfection. Joining the cast at just 21, she was immediately thrust into merciless scrutiny, forced to confront the dismissive pretty face label and constant doubts about her true talent. Behind the sultry, polished frames lay a silent battle with acute anxiety, born from the unyielding expectation to maintain flawlessness under Hollywood's unforgiving gaze. Fear of replacement, combined with an exhausting workload, kept the young actress in a constant state of emotional tension, masking inner fractures with a radiant smile before the camera. The true ordeal began when Jacqueline faced the physical and emotional toll of motherhood under extraordinary circumstances. Giving birth to 4 children while still carrying the weight of a leading role pushed her body into painful postpartum complications and severe mental exhaustion. Time and again, she was forced to return to set just weeks after childbirth, projecting power and confidence while suppressing spinal pain caused by earlier stunt-related injuries. More frightening still, her private life became a target of invasive harassment, forcing her to live in heightened vigilance, constantly fearing for her children's safety. Watching veteran figures like John McCook grow frail with age, Jacqueline was confronted with the brutal impermanence of the acting profession, turning every step at the peak of fame into a solitary struggle between a glittering crown and the ever-present threat of physical collapse. Despite sacrificing health and personal peace, Jacqueline MacInnes Wood continues to stand resilient as a symbol of extraordinary inner strength. She has drawn from her own bleeding experiences to breathe life into an unbreakable Steffy Forrester, leaving a powerful imprint on contemporary television history. Her devotion is a testament to a courageous heart, one willing to face every storm to defend her place on the throne of artistic excellence. Darlene Conley as Sally Spectra. Sally Spectra, the fiery queen of fashion with blazing red hair and an explosive personality, was the only character powerful enough to keep the Forrester dynasty on edge for more than 2 decades. Through the extraordinary performance of Darlene Conley, Sally emerged as a symbol of ambition and unbreakable resilience. She wasn't merely acting, she was living life at full volume, bringing laughter and vibrant chaos to millions of American television viewers from 1989 onward.
I'm sure we can accommodate you very soon.
Well, it better be very soon. I'm a very busy lady.
In stark contrast to the exuberance on screen, Darlene's real life was marked by painfully quiet solitude. After 2 marriages ended discreetly in heartbreak, she chose to hide her sorrow beneath layers of bold makeup. Her greatest private tragedy was never having children. The warm-hearted woman often returned from the set to a frightening stillness in an empty home. More tragically still, during the peak years of her career, she began suffering from persistent stomach pain. Unwilling to disrupt the show's demanding schedule, Darlene quietly relied on painkillers to keep smiling for the camera, unaware that death was silently taking root within her body. The merciless sentence finally arrived in the fall of 2006, when Darlene collapsed on set and was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer. It was the darkest chapter of all. The cancer spread aggressively, stripping her of mobility and reducing the once energetic Queen Spectra to a frail, exhausted figure. Brutal rounds of chemotherapy caused her legendary red hair to fall away, forcing her to retreat from the spotlight in utter helplessness.
What is the point of working in a family business if you're not in on the family gossip?
How bitter it was that a woman who had spent her life bringing joy to others would take her final breath on January 14, 2007, in the quiet of a Los Angeles hospital, while the role of Sally remained unfinished. The image of a star dying alone, without a husband or children by her side, stands in cruel contrast to the noise and laughter she devoted her entire life to giving audiences. Darlene Conley's passing left an emptiness that can never be filled. She departed while her fame was still at its brightest, leaving behind a powerful lesson in professionalism and unwavering love for her craft until the very last breath. Though her body has returned to dust, the spirit of Sally Spectra endures, as a treasured memory and an irreplaceable legacy that will never fade. Joseph Mascolo as Massimo Marone. Massimo Marone, the shipping magnate with a thunderous voice and steel-cold eyes, sent shockwaves of power through the bold and the beautiful the moment he appeared in 2001. Through the masterful performance of Joseph Mascolo, the character became more than a calculating billionaire. He was the keeper of the Forrester family's darkest, most consequential secrets. For years, Joseph carved an imposing monument of authority, becoming both a figure of fear and deep admiration to millions of fans. Behind the bearing of a king, however, were emotional wounds that never truly healed. Joseph's real life was shaped by relentless discipline imposed by his Italian-born father, forcing him to abandon his passion for the clarinet and step into the uncertain world of acting. The pain reached its cruel peak in 2003, when his devoted wife, Rose Marone, passed away after 43 years together, leaving him surrounded by fame, yet frozen by grief. Loneliness closed in on the aging artist as he swallowed his tears to preserve the image of a Massimo who never fell, while his body quietly deteriorated under recurring exhaustion on set. The most devastating sentence arrived in 2010, when Joseph was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. For a master of dialogue, watching memory and personal identity dissolve into nothingness was a catastrophic collapse. He began forgetting the scripts he cherished, and soon even the names of beloved co-stars grew unfamiliar. In his final years, the man who once commanded an empire became confused and helpless in the arms of his second wife, Patricia Schultz. He had to relearn how to eat and speak, enduring the silent humiliation of a mind slowly erased. In his last days in Santa Clarita, an unbearable stillness surrounded an artist who no longer recognized himself in the mirror, a tragic ending in which a brilliant intellect was extinguished, leaving behind a frail body adrift among irreparable fragments of memory. On December 8, 2016, Joseph Mascolo passed away at the age of 87, closing 6 long years of battle against the darkness of forgetting. His departure marked a painful pause in the history of American television. Though memory ultimately abandoned him, the image of a formidable tycoon lives on, an indelible legacy of talent and pride that will forever remain in the hearts of fans. Heather Tom as Katie Logan. Katie Logan, the sensitive, deeply layered youngest sister of the Logan family, found her most complete form through the gifted performance of Heather Tom beginning in 2007. With an extraordinary ability to convey pain that reaches straight to the heart, Heather transformed Katie into a symbol of kindness and forgiveness amid a world of glittering schemes. 6 prestigious Daytime Emmy Awards stand as living proof of her exceptional talent, elevating her to the status of an uncrowned queen of American daytime television.
That's why I'm doing this. I have to do this for Will. He's young. He won't know.
Beneath the radiant smile of a record-winning star, however, lies a soul marked by long-standing psychological scars. Heather Tom's real life has been a prolonged battle with clinical depression, a condition that has eroded her strength since she was a young woman full of ambition. The crushing pressure of being labeled a child prodigy forced her to uphold an image of perfection, only to collapse in isolation once the cameras stopped rolling. Tragically, her unshakable faith in family life also shattered when her 15-year marriage to musician James Akor officially ended in 2019. That separation not only stripped away her emotional anchor, but pushed her into profound exhaustion, leading her to speak openly about her journey through therapy in search of an escape from overwhelming sadness and emptiness. The darkest period closed in as Heather found herself carrying the full weight of single motherhood, raising her son Zane alone amid the unforgiving storm of Hollywood. Long, sleepless nights haunted by fears of replacement and ageism drained what little strength remained. On multiple occasions, colleagues were stunned to see her collapse backstage after emotionally demanding scenes, the brutal price of devotion that ignored physical limits. The contrast between a resilient Katie Logan on screen and a trembling Heather Tom, dependent on intensive medical treatment simply to remain mentally steady, is a heartbreaking reality. She used the broken pieces of her own life to sustain the role, turning every breath on screen into a struggle to reclaim humanity from the brink of total collapse. Having endured the violent turns of fate, Heather Tom continues to stand as a testament to the power of rebirth. She has transformed pain into strength through her work as a director, leaving behind creations rich in human depth and compassion. Though her emotional wounds may never fully heal, her resilience remains a guiding flame for anyone struggling in the darkness, securing the name Heather Tom as a lasting legend of courage and inner strength. Scott Clifton as Liam Spencer. Liam Spencer, the romantic forever torn between reason and emotion, has become an essential presence in American psychological drama through Scott Clifton's portrayal since 2010. By shaping a character marked by inner conflict and emotional volatility, Scott brought a rare depth that led audiences to both love and resent Liam's repeated missteps. 3 prestigious Daytime Emmy Awards stand as unequivocal recognition of this gifted artist's craft.
Dad, I will apologize 1,000 times. If I have to, I'll get on my knees and beg.
The hell you will.
Away from the camera, however, Scott Clifton's real life has unfolded as a series of quiet psychological battles steeped in solitude. Self-described as a misfit since childhood, he has long immersed himself in philosophical questions about existence, creating an invisible distance between himself and the superficial world of entertainment. The pressure of portraying the same type of character for 15 consecutive years carved out a suffocating dead end, where intellectual curiosity was restrained by the demands of livelihood and routine. More painfully, the relentless waves of public backlash directed at Liam's on-screen mistakes eroded Scott's mental well-being, leaving the sensitive actor in a prolonged state of emotional defensiveness and social anxiety. The most devastating blow came in early 2023 when his 11-year marriage to Nicole Lampson officially came to an end. It was a crushing strike to the deep faith Scott had always placed in the idea of family. The collapse of a home he had spent over a decade building plunged him into a period of profound emotional breakdown, forcing him to navigate single fatherhood amid an unforgiving filming schedule. The guilt of being unable to give his son, Ford, a complete family became a bleeding wound, draining the last reserves of a man already exhausted by the weight of fame. While viewers see Liam's calm exterior on television, few understand Scott's silent anguish as he returns alone to an empty house, where fragments of a once whole happiness linger in every breath of solitude. Today, Scott Clifton continues to choose kindness and unwavering dedication to his art. He finds solace in philosophy and music, transforming personal pain into the raw material for new creative expression. No matter how harsh life becomes, his imprint in the hearts of audiences remains a luminous chapter defined by sincerity. Scott Clifton stands as proof of a true artist's soul, one that preserves its identity while navigating the shifting currents of an ever-changing world. Joseph Campanella as Jonathan Young. Jonathan Young, the embodiment of justice and trust within the Forrester family, was portrayed by Joseph Campanella with dignified restraint and a warm, commanding voice. Joining the series in 1996, Joseph brought not only credibility to its most tense legal confrontations, but also shaped the image of a refined gentleman etched into the hearts of viewers as a steady anchor amid the scandals and turbulence of the elite world. Behind that calm exterior, however, was a life shaped by endurance and quiet, lingering pain. Born into an Italian immigrant family, Joseph endured years of harsh manual labor before finally securing a place in Hollywood at an age when many careers have already faded. The greatest sorrow of his life came from repeatedly bidding farewell to his own brothers, losses that left the sensitive artist perpetually haunted by the fragility of human existence. Despite appearing in more than 200 projects of all sizes, he carried the unspoken ache of a capable talent confined largely to supporting roles, never once reaching the cinematic summit, even after dedicating over 6 decades of his life to the craft. The true sentence fell in 2008 when Joseph was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. It was a cruel punishment for a man who had always prized dignity above all else. The hands that once turned thousands of script pages began to tremble uncontrollably, turning the simplest daily tasks into silent humiliation. The most painful stage came in his final years in Sherman Oaks, when the illness stole his resonant voice, his greatest weapon, leaving only broken sounds in an oppressive silence. To witness the once authoritative attorney now imprisoned within a failing body, wholly dependent on the care of his wife, Jill Campanella, was a reality almost unbearable to behold. He spent his final days in the cruel neglect of time, quietly watching former glory fade before passing away on May 16, 2018, after a decade-long battle with illness. Joseph Campanella's death at the age of 93 marked a somber closing note to the journey of a true gentleman. He left behind a vast legacy of devotion and professional integrity for future generations. Though his final years were marked by pain and obscurity, the image of Jonathan Young, upright and principled, remains a radiant chapter, an enduring symbol etched forever into the history of American television. Andrea Evans as Tawny Moore. Tawny Moore, the fiercely ambitious woman willing to cross any line to protect her daughter, became one of the most unforgettable villains in daytime television through the razor-sharp performance of Andrea Evans. Since her arrival in 1999, Andrea shaped a Tawny who was both detestable and deeply pitiable, creating suffocating dramatic twists that kept audiences on edge. With her mature beauty and effortless realism, she secured her place as one of the most powerful icons of American soap opera history. Behind those dazzling scenes lay a nightmare that stretched across decades. In 1987, just as her career reached its peak, Andrea became the target of a deranged stalker. He sent letters written in blood and even broke onto studio sets in attempts to attack her. The constant life-threatening terror shattered her first marriage to Wayne Massey, as fear left her incapable of nurturing any sense of normal happiness. By 1990, having lost all faith in security protections, Andrea made a devastating choice. She walked away from a flourishing career and vanished entirely from Hollywood for 10 long years simply to survive. Tragedy struck again when she attempted to reclaim her place in the industry, only to face a new, unseen enemy within her own body. After years of living in extreme vigilance due to anxiety disorder, Andrea was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was a crushing blow that forced her into brutal rounds of chemotherapy as age quietly advanced. In heartbreaking silence, she chose to keep her illness hidden from the public, enduring searing metastatic pain alone to preserve the image of a proud queen. On July 9, 2023, at her home in Pasadena, Andrea Evans passed away after prolonged exhaustion. The quiet departure of a star who once fled the shadow of fame, only to be overtaken by illness, stands as a devastating truth, leaving fans aching for a life marked by relentless hardship and grace under suffering. Andrea Evans closed a storm-filled journey, leaving behind a permanent void on screen. She stands as proof of unbreakable resolve, a woman who dared to abandon everything to protect herself, and later fought to reclaim her identity. Though her life was etched with wounds, her legacy as a devoted artist and resilient spirit remains a burning flame, offering strength to anyone facing adversity. Our journey into the hidden shadows behind the Forrester empire comes to an end, leaving us with a quiet ache for lives spent in total devotion. Behind the radiant spotlight were silent tears, brutal battles for survival, and a relentless struggle between harsh reality and burning artistic passion. They lived, they suffered, and they gave themselves completely to weave an immortal legend. Among all these stories, which one moved you the most? Share your thoughts below so we can honor these icons together.